My name is Adam Hayes, and for almost 7 years I've worked the graveyard shift. The quiet hours no one wants, when the hum of machines replaces the sound of voices. People think warehouses sleep at night, but they don't. The scanners still blink, the belts still move, and the air hums with static like the walls are breathing. That's when you start noticing things others ignore. A flicker of light when no one's around. A shadow that moves just a second too late. Or a whisper that sounds like it came from behind your shoulder, even though you're completely alone. I never used to believe in stories. I was a man of routine. Clock in, work, clock out. But everything changed the night I transferred to the Cedar Falls Amazon warehouse near Seattle. That's where I first heard the name, Eleanor Walker. It was a massive complex built in the industrial zone, surrounded by wet asphalt and flickering sodium lights. From the outside, it looked ordinary. Another facility full of machines, forklifts, and cardboard dreams. But inside, there was something different. The night shift was small, only a handful of us. And silence ruled after midnight. Even the sound of the barcode scanner seemed to echo too far, as if bouncing off unseen walls. During my first week, the manager, Mrs. Thompson, gathered us in the break room for orientation. She was strict, the kind of woman who ran everything by the book. Her voice carried authority, until she paused at one particular rule. She said, "Never open the basement door after hours. It's old storage, unstable flooring. We don't use it anymore." Everyone nodded, but one of the new hires, Michael Collins, laughed softly. He was the easygoing type, always cracking jokes to make the long nights pass faster. "Don't worry, ma'am," he said. "We can handle a basement." I remember the look Mrs. Thompson gave him. It wasn't anger, it was fear. She didn't respond, just turned and walked away. Michael worked on the packaging line, his wife Sarah in inventory scanning. They were a young couple, doing their best to balance night shifts and parenting. Sometimes their little boy Ethan came along, a small, curious kid with messy blonde hair. They couldn't find a babysitter, and Ethan loved the warehouse. He'd wander around the aisles, pretending to drive forklifts or count toy boxes. Everyone adored him. The first few nights were peaceful. We laughed, worked, and complained about coffee. But then came the quiet hours. The time after 2:30 a.m., when every belt stopped, and the hum of the machines faded into an unnatural silence. It's the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. That's when Sarah started acting strange. She'd pause mid-scan, look over her shoulder, then shake her head as if convincing herself nothing was there. One night, she told me she could feel someone watching her from the end of the aisle. I checked the cameras. Nothing. But even I had begun to feel the air shift. The temperature would drop suddenly, just for a moment. And then there was the smell. Burnt rubber, like an overheating machine. We searched for the source. Nothing on fire, no wires burning, but the smell always led back to the basement door. That door became the center of everything. Metal, rusted, with an old lock that didn't quite fit the modern look of the warehouse. When you stood close, you could hear faint sounds, a slow tapping, like metal on metal. One night Sarah went too close. She swore she heard a whisper through the crack. "Go back upstairs." Her face turned pale. She told Michael, but he laughed it off. Until the next night, when curiosity got the best of him. I was on shift when I heard the noise. The sound of a crowbar prying metal. By the time I got there, Michael had forced the basement door open. Inside was nothing but darkness and a smell of damp rust. He turned on his flashlight and stepped in. I followed reluctantly. The stairs were old, covered in dust. The air felt heavy, pressing down like a weight on our chests. At the bottom was a small room, filled with forgotten equipment. And in the center, a metal trunk, the kind that belonged to another era. Stamped across the front were the words, "Property of the Walker family, Warehouse Division, 1963. Michael brushed off the dust, half amused, half unnerved. He opened it. Inside was only one thing. A large, weathered accounting ledger. Its pages were yellowed, corners curled from age. On the first page, written in a shaky hand, were the words, "She doesn't like new workers. Last night she was counting again." A chill ran through me. I could feel someone behind us. But when I turned, there was nothing. The light flickered. Then, from the corner of the basement, a faint voice whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." Michael dropped the ledger. We bolted up the stairs, slamming the door behind us. He tried to laugh it off later, but I could see the fear in his eyes. That night he kept glancing toward the basement. So did I. The next few days were chaos. Boxes were misplaced. Pallet numbers didn't match inventory, and the system log showed impossible data. Shipments from 1963, workers listed who didn't exist. Every time someone tried to fix the issue, the numbers changed again. Then the printer started. It was an old label printer, one that had been broken for months. But at exactly 3 a.m., it turned on by itself, printing a single phrase, over and over. Still counting. Sarah tried to convince Michael to report it, but he brushed it aside, until one evening, their son Ethan pointed toward the basement door and said, "Mommy, the lady asks me to help her count boxes." The air went cold. Sarah asked, "What lady?" Ethan smiled innocently. "The one who lives downstairs." No one saw Ethan after that. During a thunderstorm, as the backup generator flickered, the security cameras caught his small figure walking toward the basement. The door opened by itself. Then, the feed went black. When the police arrived in the morning, the warehouse was silent. Michael and Sarah were gone too. On the packaging table, a single candle burned. Beside it, the printer was still running, endlessly spitting out the same line. "He's mine now." In the break room, an officer found a family photo pinned to the notice board. Michael, Sarah, Ethan, and behind them, faint but visible, a woman wearing an old Amazon uniform. The name stitched on her badge read, "Eleanor Walker, 1963, Shift Supervisor." That warehouse was shut down for months, but even now, workers say that if you walk through the south aisle at night, you'll see a shadow pass between the shelves. A tall woman in an outdated uniform scanning invisible boxes. And if your scanner suddenly stops working, if it freezes for no reason and flashes an old code, listen carefully, because somewhere in the silence a voice will whisper, "You missed one box." I didn't believe it at first. I told myself it was an urban legend, a way to keep new hires from wandering off. But when I transferred out of Cedar Falls, something followed me, not physically, but through the system. My first night at the next warehouse, I noticed something strange. In the terminal logs, under route history, one line blinked in red. Walker line, active. That's when I realized she wasn't haunting one building. She was haunting the network itself. After Cedar Falls, I promised myself I'd never work another night shift again. But promises don't mean much when rent's due and bills keep stacking up. I transferred to another facility south of Seattle, smaller, quieter, supposedly newly automated. They called it the Maple Hollow Packaging Zone. On my first day, the site manager told me with pride that everything ran through a central system now. Smart scanners, AI tracking, predictive shipping routes. I remember laughing to myself. I'd seen what systems could do. For the first few days, things were calm. The weather outside was heavy with rain, the kind that paints the whole city gray. The building smelled of wet cardboard and coffee. The machines worked smoothly and the staff was small. A few regulars, and one new trainee named Evan. Evan was in his early 20s. Quiet, always with headphones on. He was one of those people who move like they're half dreaming, polite, distracted, lost in his own thoughts. He worked fast, though, scanning and taping boxes with an almost robotic rhythm, the kind of worker supervisors love. Then the storm hit. It rolled in just after midnight. Lightning splitting the sky. Thunder shaking the metal walls of the warehouse. The power flickered, then came back. Everything hummed again, but the air changed. The silence between the sounds grew longer. The scanner beeps sharper. Around 1:15, I noticed Evan standing still by the conveyor belt. The light from his scanner was blinking red. I walked over and asked what was wrong. He looked at the screen and frowned. "It's showing a route that doesn't exist," he said. I glanced at it. The words read, Route, Maple Hollow Facility, 1963. I felt my stomach drop. That year again. That same mark that had followed me from Cedar Falls. I tried to laugh it off. Probably just a system glitch, I said. But the machines around us had gone quiet. The belt stopped moving. The overhead lights dimmed, one by one, until the whole floor looked like a graveyard of shadows. Evan called for the supervisor. No answer. He tried the radio, just static. Then he said something that froze me. "Do you hear that?" I did. A soft humming sound, low, steady. Like a machine trying to start up after years of dust. We followed the sound toward the far end of the zone, near the emergency exit. That's when I saw it. A flicker of light in the control booth. A figure standing there. He waved. "You lost, buddy?" It was a man. Tall, wearing a faded yellow raincoat, face half hidden under a hood. He looked like he belonged there. But something about him didn't fit. His clothes were old, not company-issued. "Name's Jack," he said. Voice rough but friendly. "I run the backup shift. Storm's messing with the main line. Come inside before the power trips again." Evan hesitated. I should have said no, but curiosity has always been my curse. We followed him into the booth. Inside, the air was stale and smelled faintly of burnt plastic. A single lantern sat on the table, casting a dull glow. I looked around. The place felt wrong, too quiet. There were cobwebs on the monitors, a layer of dust on the control panel, like no one had used this room in decades. On the desk was a label machine. The metal casing was scratched, and on top someone had carved with a blade. Jack's line, "Since 1963. "Sit down," Jack said, pulling up 2 chairs. "You both look soaked. I'll get you some coffee." He handed us 2 mugs. The liquid inside was cold, thick, and smelled faintly of something burned. I didn't drink it. Evan did. 1 small sip, then set it down. "Does this booth still get used?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Jack smiled faintly. "Used to, before the fire. I felt a chill climb my spine. What fire? He looked down, his voice low. The one that burned this section. My wife didn't make it out. She was on shift that night. The lantern flickered. I felt my heartbeat quicken. What was her name? I asked. He looked up slowly. His eyes were dark and tired. June Walker. Evan and I froze. I could feel his breath catch. The name hit like ice water down my back. Walker. Then, from behind Jack, in the reflection of the glass window, we saw her. A woman, wearing an old uniform, her hair burnt at the edges, skin grey, eyes hollow. Around her neck was a deep red burn mark, stretching down her collarbone. She wasn't looking at Jack. She was looking at us. Jack, I whispered, "Who's that behind you?" He didn't turn. He just smiled, slow and sad. "Oh, that's June. She still likes to pack orders sometimes." Evan stood up suddenly, knocking his chair over. The lantern's flame froze, completely still, not flickering, like time itself had paused. The woman moved closer. One step, then another. Her eyes were locked on Evan. Her voice was soft, broken, like the sound of static. "You missed a box!" Evan screamed and ran to the door, pulling at the handle. It wouldn't move. I turned back to Jack, but he was gone. Only his raincoat hung on the chair. From somewhere behind me, his voice echoed. No longer human. Deeper. Hollow. "You shouldn't have worked the storm shift. This line only runs for the lost ones." The lights went out. For a moment I saw nothing but darkness. Then a flash of lightning illuminated the booth. And in that split second, I saw June standing inches from me. Her face twisted, whispering something over and over. Still counting. Still counting. I ran. I don't remember how I got out or when the storm stopped. I woke up outside, soaked and shivering. The dawn barely breaking over the horizon. The entire packaging zone behind me was silent. No lights, no power, no sound. The others found me around 6 a.m. The control booth was locked from the inside. When the technicians finally pried it open, they found a half-burnt coffee mug and a bicycle helmet. Evan's. The monitors were still on, but every screen showed the same blinking line. Jack's line active. Counting resumed. Evan was never found. They said maybe he panicked, ran out into the storm, got lost. But I knew better. I'd seen the reflection. I'd seen her a week later. I tried to check the system logs. There it was again. That familiar signature buried deep in the data. Supervisor, Walker, E, 1963. No matter which facility I worked in, the system carried her forward. The date, the name, the phrase. It was like she had become part of the code, a ghost written into the very framework of Amazon's network. I quit Maple Hollow after that, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't done with me yet. I kept seeing things. A flicker on the monitor when I logged in. A shadow by the scanner. The printer in my new job, spitting out old label codes from 1963. The day I decided to take a break from work, I received a shipment route confirmation for a delivery I never scheduled. It was addressed to me. Destination, Station 46, Nevada. Attached at the bottom was a note. No sender. No signature. Just 3 words. Room 7 active. It's strange how life tries to pull you back to the things you swore you'd left behind. I had moved 2 states away, changed my number, even deleted every trace of my old jobs. For the first time in months, I felt like the air around me wasn't watching. But then that email arrived. Plain text, no subject line, no sender. Shipment confirmed. Station 46, Nevada. Room number 7. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. Because room number 7 wasn't part of any warehouse. It was something else. Something from the early employee housing units Amazon had built decades ago for long-haul staff. Small motels near isolated distribution stations. Most of them were demolished in the late 80s. Most, but not all. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I packed a small bag, took my recorder, and started driving. The Nevada desert has a way of making time feel slower. The road stretches endlessly, one straight scar across miles of red dust. I drove for hours until the sky turned from gold to gray. Station 46 appeared like a mirage, a forgotten outpost of concrete and rusted metal, half swallowed by sand. The sign outside was missing most of its letters, but the shape was still visible. A Mayan. Logistics and lodging. I parked the car near the old loading dock and stepped out. The wind carried the sound of loose metal scraping against concrete. The main building was empty. Windows broken, machines long gone. But behind it, through a narrow alleyway, I saw a small structure still standing. A motel. 6 rooms in a row. And at the very end, a door with the number 7 painted in red. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper. But I walked toward it. Every step felt heavier, as if the air itself didn't want me there. The closer I got, the more I could feel that faint electric pressure behind my eyes. The same one I'd felt in Cedar Falls. When I reached the door, I noticed something carved into the wood. Counting never ends. I turned the handle. It was unlocked. Inside, the room was perfectly preserved. Like someone had just left moments ago. The bed was made, a lamp glowed dimly on the table, and a small clock ticked softly on the wall. Everything smelled faintly of old paper and static. I set my recorder on the table and hit play. "This is Adam Hayes," I said quietly. "Former logistics operator, employee ID Brock. Doesn't matter anymore. This is my 3rd recording. I'm documenting whatever this is. If you find this, don't open room number 7. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. Nothing happened for a long time. Just the sound of the ticking clock and the desert wind pressing against the glass. Then faintly the light began to flicker. The bulb hummed, and from the corner of the room I heard it. A soft tapping. I looked down. A label printer sat on the floor, half covered in dust. It shouldn't have had power, but it was on. The tape inside started moving slowly, printing one line after another. Order received. Supervisor. Walker E. Item. Employee Hayes. A. Destination. Room number 7. My throat went dry. I tried to unplug it, but the cord wasn't even connected. The printer kept spitting labels onto the floor, one after another. Each one had my name, and then the clock stopped ticking. The air went dead silent. I looked up, and saw her. Eleanor Walker, standing in the corner, face pale, eyes empty. She looked younger now, like the fire had never touched her. She wore the same uniform, faded blue, name tag burned halfway through. She didn't move. "Why me?" I asked. My voice cracked. "Why follow me?" She tilted her head slightly, like she didn't understand the question. Then she spoke, calm, steady, like a machine reading a script. "Because you counted wrong, the walls began to hum. The old light bulb above us brightened until the entire room glowed white. I could see shadows moving beneath the surface of the walls, shapes of people, faces pressed against the paint, whispering, every one of them repeating the same thing. Still counting. I stumbled backward, my hands shaking. "What are you?" I shouted. Eleanor stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "I was the system," she said softly. "I kept track of what was owed. Then they burned me, but I kept counting." Her eyes flickered, turning black. "Now the system keeps me." The printer stopped. The lamp shattered, and suddenly I was outside. I don't remember opening the door. I don't remember running. But I was standing in the middle of the desert, room number 7 behind me, glowing faintly red, like an ember that refused to die. The next morning, a local patrol officer found me walking down the highway barefoot. He said I looked pale as a ghost, kept muttering something about numbers. I didn't tell him the truth. Who would believe me? When I finally checked my recorder, the file was there. But the playback was strange. My voice was gone. In its place, a woman's voice whispered the same phrase over and over for 10 minutes straight. "Shipment received. Room number 7 active." I sent the file to a friend in digital forensics. He said it wasn't a recording at all. It was a loop, a perfect data pattern, repeating endlessly. A week later, he disappeared. Now, every night at exactly 2:46 a.m., my phone buzzes once. No number, no message, just a blank notification. And when I look at the time, it always freezes. For a few seconds before jumping forward again. Somewhere out there, the system is still running, still scanning, still counting. And if you've listened this far, maybe it's already found you too. Because every story I tell isn't just a story. It's a route. And sometimes the system delivers back. So before you close this video, before you scroll away or switch off your phone, listen carefully. If you hear a faint beep, if your screen flickers for just a second, don't check the time. Just leave it, because that's how it starts. This is Adam Hayes. And I'm signing off, for now. Until the next shift, before you go. If you're still here, still listening, maybe you're like me. Maybe you don't believe in ghosts. Maybe you just like stories that make the night a little quieter. But these aren't just stories anymore. Every name I speak, every place I visit, it leaves a trace somewhere. And if you've been hearing the faint beeps, or if your lights just flickered while listening, don't panic. It only means one thing. You've joined the count. If you want me to keep digging, to find out who Eleanor Walker really was, then make sure you subscribe. Leave a comment if you've ever worked a night shift, and tell me if your scanner ever beeped on its own. And if this story gave you chills, hit that like button, because it helps more lost workers find their way back to the light. This is Adam Hayes, signing off. Stay safe out there. And whatever you do, don't open the basement door.